David Brewster here with another 3 for All, and this is 3 Guthrie Govan Licks from 2010. And I'm a huge Guthrie Govan fan, and my history with him, actually I do have kind of a history with him, but it goes all the way back to 1996. And I know for some of you watching this, you might be thinking, wow, back in the 90s. But yes, my original introduction to Guthrie Govan actually came from Guitar Techniques magazine. And this is the very first issue that I bought, which that was, March of 96. And when I bought the magazine, of course, Jeff Beck on the cover, and I was like, all right, cool. And at the time, I was looking for something like this, full of lessons, and it also had, audio CDs where you could kind of play with backing tracks and stuff like that. And as soon as I bought the magazine and took it home, I worked through, the lessons and everything, and I was really impressed. And I thought, wow, this, guitar magazine from England is awesome. And it basically became, an obsession or something that I just, every month I remember going to Borders or Barnes and Noble and I would grab, Guitar Techniques. And, way back when, which there you can kind of see, you know, Guthrie as a puppy, I guess. And I was a puppy too, back when I bought this magazine. But that was my introduction to him. And then fast forward, a few more years. In 2006, I was at the Summer NAMM show in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was making my rounds. And I do remember it vividly because that was the year that Burns released the Brian May guitar. So I was visiting the Burns booth, checking out the Brian May, the Red Special. And around the corner, I could hear just this crazy, Guitar-mageddon, live performance. So I walked around the corner, and sure enough, around the corner in this kind of smaller little hall, there was the Cornford booth. And there was, Jamie Humphries and Guthrie Govan playing together at their booth. And they were just melting faces, it was amazing. And I stood there and I thought, oh my gosh, the guys, from that magazine. Completely blown away. And I remember I ran up and talked to them, and they were so confused that I knew who they were. They were like, you know who we are? And I was like, yeah, I read you guys every month, in Guitar Techniques. And I remember at that time they were so confused, like, really, you know us? And it's like, yeah, I read you all the time. And then after that, fast forward a few more years, and then I saw the Aristocrats in Indianapolis at Birdie's. And that would have been, what, 2012? And met Brian and Marco and Guthrie, and they were so amazing. It was a great show. And then the following year, I saw Steven Wilson at Park West up in Chicago. And once again, I got to meet, basically I met everybody except for Steven. I think he was on the bus. But I was working for a website and I got to review, the concert, which there's the program and the autographs and the backstage pass and stuff. And that was awesome, to attend the show, which that was literally, one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing. And I'm a huge Porcupine Tree and Steven Wilson fan, but I was mainly there, to work because I was reviewing it for this website, louderthanhell.net, that I used to write for. And, met Guthrie again. And then fast forward a few more years, and actually my second lesson that I had published in Guitar Player magazine, Guthrie's Slippery Things. That was in the November 2015 issue of Guitar Player. So I'm just sharing all this to let you know I'm a huge fan, and I think he's a brilliant musician. The licks from this lesson came from a bootleg from 2010, and it looks like it was a live performance in India. And I found it on YouTube, and I'd never seen, the footage. And in the lesson, we're actually going to be looking at some licks that he played during their performance of the song Stratus. And Stratus is from Billy Cobham's, classic 1973 album Spectrum, which had Tommy Bolin on guitar. If you haven't heard Spectrum, run or click your way to find it and listen to it, because that's a classic, fusion, rock, type album. And it's brilliant. But then Jeff Beck has, performed that song before. So Guthrie is playing Stratus, but he's also channeling Jeff Beck. So it's kind of ironic that I flashed, the first magazine that I found Guthrie Govan in happened to have Jeff Beck on the cover. And here we are, channeling, Guthrie Govan, who was channeling Jeff Beck via a Billy Cobham song. The first lick basically is flirting between B minor pentatonic and B harmonic minor, and the harmonic minor kind of creeps in on the very last note of this phrase. It's really crafty, clever the way he put this together. And Stratus, the Cobham tune, basically revolves around B minor 7 here. And there's some changes, of course, but it's loosely based around B minor 7, B minor, and the lick looks like this. Really cool phrase. So he's basically starting out of, if you think of the B minor pentatonic box, he's starting, on position 5, or the shape right before the box, this one. And he's starting on the A, the flat 7. And then he basically slides after that phrase. And then he's basically targeting that A again. So he keeps targeting, instead of targeting, the root notes, he's targeting, flat 7s and 4ths and 3rds and some different things. And it's really interesting, to notice that. And that really comes more from fusion than from rock, because, in rock and blues, you target the root, and in jazz you kind of avoid the root, especially in fusion. You kind of dance around the root, and occasionally you'll flirt with it or hit it. But I like the way he's phrasing this. And there's that last note where it's kind of signaling, harmonic minor. And I like the jumping, and the shifting. And just the way the whole phrase is put together, because that sounds very much like Guthrie Govan. The next lick is still flirting with this harmonic minor tonality, and he's also doing this gradual kind of chromatic movement on the high E string, and then it ends with the D minor arpeggio. But we're playing D minor, that D minor arpeggio over B minor 7. So it's kind of a chord substitution, or arpeggio substitution, which comes from jazz. But it looks like this. And I like that kind of gradual, jerky, kind of sound. And once again, he's targeting, the flat 7, that A note, over, B minor 7, which is really cool. And once again, I like the way it's kind of stepping down, and you can definitely hear, there's definitely a chromatic, some chromatic action there on the high E string. But he kind of like divides it up, between this and that and that. Really tasty phrase, and it just sounds kind of bizarre, but it fits, and I'm really a big fan of ideas like that. The next lick is this rapid B minor pentatonic bass phrase, and it reminds me of Eric Johnson, big time. And he's playing from, B minor pentatonic, basically this position, way up on the fretboard here. I guess you can think of that as shape 4 of the minor pentatonic scale. If you think of the box as shape 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, that's kind of where I'm getting that reference number. And I almost always refer to the box as shape 1, even though I think there are some other methods and other ways that people have labeled those scales, but everybody knows the box. So I just kind of made the executive decision, like, okay, in my world, that's shape 1. And then I kind of move, around from there. But this position right here, and he's basically starting on B right there. I'm going to go through it kind of slow. And there he's basically walking all the way up to the octave, that higher B. And then he goes back to this A and slides in and out of that B. Like that. And then he's going to bend this E up to F sharp and back. And then ends on that B. And Guthrie does a lot of licks like that, where he shift slides, quickly. And I do remember, a lesson in Guitar Techniques magazine where he showed this E minor pentatonic lick out of the box right here. And I think he mentioned that he was channeling Steve Lukather, like from the Rosanna solo, like some of those crazy bends that Luke did. And he was mimicking that, but he was mimicking using slides. And there you can see we're basically sliding out of E minor pentatonic, and we're grabbing, higher notes from a different position, mimicking, those Steve Lukather bends from Rosanna. Very quirky and strange lick, but it's cool. And definitely make sure you get up to that that last note too. And then the lick from this live solo, once again, the B minor idea, the kind of Eric Johnson idea, looks like this. Here's a bonus lick, and this didn't come from the bootleg live footage from India. This actually appeared in Guitar Techniques magazine back in the 90s at some point. And then eventually when I put together the lesson for guitar player, I kind of recycled this phrase because it's very interesting, very unusual. And I don't really remember seeing this anywhere until I saw Guthrie, kind of showing it or demonstrating it in Guitar Techniques. And then of course, I changed the key and kind of reworked the idea a little bit when I, put it in Guitar Player. And then once again, I've kind of changed the key and reworked it again for this lesson. So it's all based around the same thing. I'm just kind of putting it, in a different progression or, kind of a different sequence of movements for the lick. But it's these minor 9. You can almost think of like an add 9 kind of thing, because we're really just playing the root, the 5th, and the 9th. And that would be a D minor 9 or just a D9, I guess. And what we're going to do is this. And there you can see we're basically connecting notes along the A and the B string. And we're just using that same arpeggio, that kind of open voiced arpeggio there. D minor 9. It's going to go up to an F minor 9. G minor 9. B flat. C. And then finally it's going to end on D. So slowly. Really cool lick. And also Guthrie's a big hybrid picker. He hybrid picks things all the time. And you could hybrid pick that lick too. And it kind of gives it a little different ring or different character. And if you're not a big hybrid picker, you can of course, kind of, alternate pick through it like this. But really cool phrase, and I love kind of playing around with that idea. It sounds very modern and interesting too. That's going to wrap this look at 3 licks from Guthrie Govan from 2010. Obviously, I'm a huge fan and kind of have a little bit of a history, meeting and writing about this marvelous, guitar player from England. And really anything that he's done, whether, solo material, Aristocrats, Steven Wilson, even some of the work he did with Asia, back in the day. Everything he did in Guitar Techniques magazine, I think it's brilliant. I learned so much from, working through his lessons and his material, and Jamie Humphries and Phil Hilborn and all those guys, from the magazine. But definitely, Guthrie's been a shining star for a long time. And it really just took me, just by chance buying that magazine, and then I noticed him. And I was like, who's the guy that can go from Jeff Beck to Steve Vai, Sean Lane? I mean, he's showing Buckethead and all this crazy stuff. And then he'd turn around and show like Pat Martino and Scott Henderson stuff. And, it was like he was everywhere at once. And I couldn't help but notice him, because he's brilliant. But anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it, more content material. Thank you.